The old apartment building had no elevator, and Marcus stood at the bottom of the dark stairwell, his work boots covered in grease from another 16-hour shift at the auto repair shop, every muscle in his body screaming for rest, when he heard the small voice echo down from somewhere above. "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." He looked up into the shadows and saw a little girl sitting on the landing of the third floor, her legs dangling through the railing bars, her face pale as moonlight in the dim glow of the single working bulb. She could not have been more than 6 years old, wearing a thin nightgown despite the winter cold seeping through the broken windows, and even from this distance Marcus could see that something was terribly wrong, that this child was sick in a way that went beyond a simple fever or flu. Marcus was 42 years old and had spent the last decade trying to outrun his past, working himself to exhaustion so he would not have to think about the family he had lost, the mistakes that haunted him, the daughter who would have been about this girl's age if she had lived. He had moved to this rundown neighborhood because the rent was cheap and nobody asked questions, had taken a job at the mechanic shop because he was good with his hands and the owner paid cash and did not care about the years Marcus had spent in prison for a crime born of desperation and bad choices. He kept his head down, spoke to no one, lived in a one-room apartment that smelled of mildew and regret, and every night he climbed these same stairs alone, grateful only that another day had passed without him having to feel anything at all. But now this child sat above him asking for help, and Marcus felt something shift in the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart. He called up to ask where her parents were, and the little girl, whose name he would soon learn was Lily, told him in that same ethereal voice that her mama was at work, that she would not be home until morning, that she worked the night shift at the hospital cleaning floors because it paid a little more than the day shift and they needed every dollar for the medicine that was supposed to make Lily better but never seemed to work. Lily explained that she had tried to climb the stairs herself, that she had made it to the third floor before her legs stopped working right, before the dizziness came and the world started spinning, and now she was stuck here in the cold and dark, too weak to go up or down, waiting for someone to notice. If you believe that broken people can still do beautiful things, that second chances are real, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can heal wounds we did not know we carried, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your story, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue spreading messages of hope and redemption. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. When he reached Lily, he knelt down and saw that her skin had a translucent quality, like fine porcelain that might shatter at the slightest touch, and her eyes were too bright, feverish and ancient in her small face. He asked if she was hurt, if he should call an ambulance, but Lily shook her head and said the ambulance cost too much money, that her mama had explained they could not afford it unless she was actually dying, that they were managing even though sometimes it did not feel like it. She looked at Marcus with such trust and hope that he felt his chest constrict, and he found himself asking what her secret was, the one she promised to tell if he carried her upstairs. Lily smiled then, a luminous expression that transformed her pale face, and she said. The secret was so special that she could only whisper it when they reached the top, that he would have to carry her all the way to the 5th floor where she lived, and then she would share something nobody else in the world knew. Marcus had not held a child in 10 years, not since the night his own daughter had been taken from him in a car accident that had destroyed his marriage and his faith in any belief that the universe was anything but cruel. But he reached out and gathered Lily into his arms, shocked at how little she weighed, how fragile she felt against his chest, like a bird with hollow bones made more for flight than for surviving the weight of illness. He began to climb, and Lily rested her head against his shoulder, her breathing shallow and labored, her small hand clutching the collar of his greasy work shirt. She talked as they ascended, her voice dreamy and disconnected, telling him about her mama who worked so hard, about the doctors who kept trying different treatments, about the rare disease that was eating away at her muscles and her strength, something with a long Latin name that Lily had learned to pronounce perfectly even though she was only 6. She told him about school, which she attended on the days when she felt strong enough, about the friends who had slowly stopped inviting her to play because she could not run or jump or keep up with their games, about the teacher who read her extra stories during recess when she had to sit inside and rest. Marcus listened and climbed, each step feeling heavier than the last, not from Lily's weight but from the crushing awareness of how much suffering existed in the world, how many people were struggling in silence, how easy it was to walk past pain when you were consumed by your own. He thought about all the times he had heard sounds from other apartments in this building, crying, arguing, doors slamming, and how he had deliberately turned away, put in earplugs, convinced himself that everyone else's problems were not his concern. He had spent years believing that isolation was safety, that caring about nothing meant nothing could hurt him, that numbness was the same as healing. By the time they reached the fourth-floor landing, Marcus needed to stop and catch his breath, and Lily apologized for being heavy even though she weighed almost nothing. She told him about her papa, who had left when the medical bills started piling up, who had promised to send money but never did, who could not handle watching his daughter fade away and had chosen the cowardice of abandonment over the courage of staying. She said it without bitterness, as if she were describing the weather or what she had eaten for breakfast, and Marcus realized that this child had already learned lessons about human frailty and betrayal that most people spent lifetimes avoiding. He continued up the final flight of stairs, his lungs burning, his arms aching, but also feeling more alive than he had in years, more connected to another human being than he had allowed himself to be since he had lost everything. When they finally reached the 5th floor, Lily directed him to apartment 5C, where a door stood slightly ajar, revealing a tiny space that was clean but sparse, with furniture that looked salvaged from curbs and medical equipment that dominated the main room. Marcus carried Lily inside and gently set her down on a worn couch covered with blankets and pillows, and she looked up at him with those two bright eyes and gestured for him to come closer so she could whisper her secret. Marcus leaned down, and Lily cupped her small hands around his ear, her breath warm against his skin, and she told him that she was going to die soon, that she knew this even though her mama pretended everything would be okay. That she could feel her body getting weaker every day, that she was not scared of dying but she was scared of leaving her mama all alone. The secret, she whispered, was that she had been praying for an angel to come and take care of her mama after she was gone, someone kind and strong who would make sure her mama did not give up, who would remind her mama that life was still worth living even after the worst things happened. And then Lily pulled back and looked at Marcus with perfect certainty and said that he was the angel she had been praying for, that she knew at the moment she heard his footsteps on the stairs, that sometimes angels came covered in grease and wearing work boots and carrying their own broken hearts. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, the first tears he had allowed himself to cry since the night of his daughter's funeral, and he told Lily that he was no angel, that he was just a man who had failed everyone he had ever loved, that he had spent years in prison, that he was probably the last person anyone should trust with something precious. But Lily shook her head and said that angels were just people who chose to help even when it was hard, who showed up when they could have walked away, who carried strangers up dark stairs because it was the right thing to do. She said that broken things could still be beautiful, that her mama had told her that once when Lily was crying about her broken body, and now she was telling him the same thing. Over the weeks and months that followed, Marcus became a fixture in apartment 5C and in Lily's life. He met her mother, an exhausted woman named Grace who worked herself to the bone and carried a grief so profound it seemed to weigh down her shoulders, and he offered to help in whatever ways he could. He fixed things in the apartment that had been broken for months, the leaking faucet, the loose railing, the window that would not close all the way. He started coming by after work to sit with Lily so Grace could sleep for a few hours before her night shift, reading to the little girl from her favorite books, playing quiet games that did not require much movement, listening to her stories and dreams and fears. Marcus learned the rhythms of Lily's illness, the good days when she had enough energy to draw pictures or watch movies, and the bad days when she could barely lift her head, when pain medications were the only mercy. He was there for the hospital visits, driving them in his old truck because taxis were too expensive, sitting in waiting rooms during procedures, holding Grace's hand when doctors delivered news that was never quite hopeful enough. He watched as Lily's condition deteriorated despite everyone's best efforts, as the treatments stopped working, as the conversations shifted from cure to comfort. On a spring evening when cherry blossoms were falling like snow outside the window, Lily asked Marcus to carry her one more time, not up the stairs but out to the small balcony where she could feel the breeze on her face. He wrapped her in blankets and held her carefully, stepping outside into the twilight, and Lily looked up at the emerging stars and told him that she was ready, that she was not scared anymore because she knew her mama would be okay, that the angel had come just like she prayed. She thanked Marcus for carrying her, not just up the stairs that first night but through all the days since, and she made him promise that he would stay with her mama, that he would help Grace remember how to laugh and hope in life. If this story has moved you, if you have felt the weight of loss or the unexpected grace of connection, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to know they are not alone, and leave a comment telling us about the angels in your life, the people who showed up when you needed them most. Lily passed away 3 days later, peacefully in her sleep, and Marcus sat with Grace through the longest night of both their lives, two broken people holding each other together through grief that seemed unsurvivable. But they did survive, day by difficult day, finding reasons to keep going in the small rituals of remembrance and in the growing awareness that Lily had been right, that they had been brought together for a purpose neither had understood at first. Before we close, please comment below, how has a stranger's kindness changed the direction of your life? Marcus and Grace built a life together, not to replace what they had lost but to honor it, creating a home filled with Lily's artwork and memories, volunteering at the children's hospital where other families faced impossible diagnoses, carrying each other upstairs both literal and metaphorical whenever one of them felt too weak to climb alone. And on the anniversary of that first night when a little girl in a dark stairwell had asked a broken man to carry her upward, Marcus would stand at the bottom of those same stairs and remember the secret that had saved his life. That angels are just ordinary people who choose to show up, to help, to love, even when their own hearts are shattered, and that sometimes being carried leads to learning how to carry others, and in that sacred exchange, we all find our way home.